losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm John Dickerson. Join me for the Daily Report, weekdays on CBS News 24/7.
Tonight.
What are the delegates here in Milwaukee saying in the aftermath of the Trump assassination attempt?
Then how investigators are trying to determine the shooter's motive and how the shooting is reshaping Trump's convention speech on the CBS Evening News.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
This is CBS.
How fast do you think you were going?
195 mile an hour. This is incredible. How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's
the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes. Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Good to be with you. I'm Robert Costa, the chief election and campaign correspondent for CBS News here at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Unfolding just behind me here in the Fiserv Arena, JD Vance, the Ohio senator, is looking up to the stage as different officials from his home state of Ohio, the Buckeye State, talk about his characteristics. You just heard an I. They are nominating JD Vance as the vice presidential nominee of the Republican Party. The cheers behind me right now. Senator Vance is now formally former President Trump's running mate. This is a historic moment for the Republicans, a 39-year-old now serving as the former president's VP. And you can hear it right in the crowd behind me, cheers of JD, JD. This is someone who has adopted Trump's ideological platform in recent years since his election to the Senate in 2022. And I was just on the convention floor talking to delegates. It's evident that so far this pick is going across very well. There's JD Vance right there, giving some hugs to some supporters and friends. He's there with his wife. He's shaking the hands there of the Ohio governor, Mike DeWine, who's been a big supporter. What a rapid rise in American politics for Senator Vance, the author of Hillbilly Elegy, a book that got a lot of acclaim, became a bestseller in the wake of the 2016 presidential election, talking about working people in places like Southern Ohio. Now a United States senator, and now on the ticket. We're now going to Meg Oliver, our CBS News correspondent, who is covering the assassination attempt of Trump in Western Pennsylvania. Meg, thanks for being with us.
Thanks. So for the very latest, Bob, on the investigation, at this point we know that the FBI has completed searching the shooter's vehicle and his home, and they're also analyzing his electrical devices, including his cell phone. So far, they have not turned up anything in relation to a motive or his beliefs. We also confirmed today that on the day of the attempted assassination attempt, the shooter bought a box of ammunition with 50 rounds for his AR-style rifle that was purchased legally by his father in 2013. We're also learning new information about the victims. Two remain here at Allegheny General Hospital in critical but stable condition. 57-year-old David Dutch, who was a former Marine corporal, and I just got off the phone with a family friend of 74-year-old James Copenhagen. They confirmed to me that he was shot twice, once in the leg and once in the stomach, but he is stable. They also described him as a dedicated volunteer of the Moon Township Republican Committee. Meanwhile, the third victim, as we know now, 50-year-old Corey Comparatori, witnesses say he was gunned down trying to shield his family from gunfire during the rally. He was a longtime firefighter, retired a few years ago as chief. His gear was still hanging in his locker when we visited the fire department yesterday. They all described him as an amazing gentleman, a family man, and someone who loved God. His wife and his daughter paid beautiful tributes online. His wife describing her husband as someone who died as the hero he always was, and his daughter described him as a real-life action hero. Bob?
Meg, stay with us. There is so much talk here at the Republican National Convention about the impact this assassination attempt has had on the former president, Donald Trump Jr., recently speaking today with CBS News about how so many people are rattled in the Trump family and the Trump inner circle. But tell us more about what's happening on the ground, what you're learning about other victims, what you're hearing.
Yeah, so I've talked to several people today from Butler. One woman who was there, she was actually sitting in the rally 8 seats down from James Copenhagen. And after the shots rang out, her daughter-in-law crawled down to be with him and said, "Can I pray with you?" before he was whisked away. Everybody that I have talked to, I've talked to people at the barber shop and at the town hall, and they're all describing this big feeling of sadness, and they wished it hadn't happened there. And they're scared. One person told me he's scared to travel across the country in wake of this. This is a small town, tight-knit community, and it's all anyone is talking about, and people are very sad.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes. Did you ever have these problems before the derailment? No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome, everyone, to the Republican National Convention, and welcome to an unexpectedly new location for me to do this work this afternoon here on the first day of the Republican National Convention. We had what can I think fairly be described as an unexpected technical meltdown. It went throughout the convention floor, many television cameras, including the one that I was using. I don't think I'm taking it personally after all went down. So I've had to move throughout the convention floor, find a camera that works so we can continue our conversation and our coverage about the Republican National Convention. It has been, to put a fine point on it, an eventful afternoon. A couple of things have happened. Officially, Donald Trump is the nominee for the Republican National Party, at the Republican National Convention for the Republican Party for the 3rd consecutive presidential cycle. That is history. Never happened before. Same person being the party nominee 3 presidential cycles. And then more news. JD Vance, Ohio Senator, 39 years old. Just by voice vote, by acclamation, made former President Trump's running mate. That's all happened this afternoon here at the convention. It is in recess now. Part 2 of the first day of the Republican National Convention will start in about an hour and a half. Delegates may filter off the convention floor. They may stay here. It's been an active and engaged afternoon. I want to talk to John Dickerson, my colleague and senior political analyst for CBS News in New York. John, it's been a little bit of movement, a little bit of, let's say, ad-libbing our way through things here, but that's what makes political conventions and live television so endlessly fascinating, at least for me.
That's right. I slid down the pole from my office and plopped into this seat when I was alerted to your technical difficulties there, Major. But at least it's not the days from the early days of convention coverage when floor correspondents had to wear packs on their backs like the ones the astronauts wore when they landed on the moon in order to get coverage going. So at least we have that going for us.
Yes, we can move a bit more nimbly and do so with fewer pieces of baggage. I just bring my standard emotional baggage, none of any other kind.
So, Major.
So, John,
yeah.
I like your thoughts on this afternoon as it's played out. We have so many things to talk about. First of all, Donald Trump, third time in a row, that's history. JD Vance, the next generation of the Make America Great movement. And those two are the big headlines from this afternoon.
Let's start with the first one. As you pointed out, history within the Republican Party, 3 straight nominations. Nixon did it, but he had that interregnum there between 60 and 68. But it's extraordinary to me, before the awful events of Saturday, going into this convention, there was a kind of unity behind Donald Trump that it was very hard for me to go back and find unity that unanimous. When you think about some of the most exciting convention fights in past history, they've been in the Republican ranks. 76, Reagan and Ford. 52, Eisenhower and Taft. 64, Rockefeller and Goldwater. These were conventions of the frothy, exciting exchange of ideas and back and forth between candidates who wanted their party's nomination, and they played out for everybody to watch. All of that history's gone. Unanimity behind Donald Trump. And then it's, of course, extraordinary that there's unanimity given what some of the major players in the Republican Party said about Donald Trump just after January 6th. Mitch McConnell, who I gather got some raspberries in the reception there today, said that Donald Trump was morally and practically responsible for the attack on the Capitol. Despite that history, he's the nominee. So that's just extraordinary. Then JD Vance, a fascinating pick, and particularly with respect to the focus on, the rebalancing of the economic opportunity in America. How much will that be a part of the argument, or will it just be we're on your side and there won't be a lot of specifics about what does it mean to reorient the economy towards the working class voter that he says he represents? He's said favorable things about the Biden administration's antitrust efforts against the Amazon and Google and Apple and others. Is that something they'll talk more about? You could imagine the Republican coalition, which has some businesses in it that might not agree with some of those economic policies, finding some tension if that becomes a part of the conversation. Who knows if it actually will? But certainly in those pictures that are running right now of J.D. Vance, he's getting a good reception on the floor. And that's probably the first thing you want to do if you're a vice presidential nominee.
John, stay with us just one moment. I want to bring in Congressman Mike Lawler from New York. Congressman, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Major.
You bear a slight resemblance to J.D. Vance, President Trump's pick as the nominee. I want to get first your reaction to J.D. Vance being added to the Trump ticket.
Well, look, obviously, as you talked about, a new voice, a first millennial on a presidential ticket ever. This is a guy who grew up from humble beginnings. His grandmother was a Blue Dog Democrat. Right. Grew up in the Rust Belt, obviously, enlisted in the U.S. Marines.
Wrote a best-selling book about not only his family, but the economic privations that affected that region in which he grew up, which he thought reflected some kind of indifference from Washington about the fate of that part of the country.
Absolutely, and that's part of the country that's going to determine who the next president is. You know, the Rust Belt, Appalachia, will have a tremendous impact, starting Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, obviously. So, you know, he obviously comes from a part of the country that is going to have a big say in the outcome of this election. Again, this is a guy who enlisted in the U.S. Marines after 9/11, served in Iraq, came back home, created a successful venture capitalist business, has his law degree from Yale, obviously has risen pretty quickly in Republican politics. I will say my beard's a little better, but hey, you can't win them all.
Duly noted.
But
duly noted.
Look, I think he obviously is going to bring a fresh perspective and a voice for the working class in this country, who, you know, frankly have hurt under Joe Biden's policies. The cost of groceries, the cost of gasoline, the cost of a home, the cost of rent has gone up astronomically in this country under Joe Biden. And obviously the migrant crisis at our southern border, 10 million migrants coming into our country since Joe Biden took office, larger than the state of Ohio, in which JD Vance represents.
I want to ask you, Congressman Lawler, about the evolution of JD Vance. Anyone who does a quick internet search, types in JD Vance, Trump 2016, can find a laundry list of pretty tough criticisms. His rhetoric was rhetorical heroin. He said he might be America's next Hitler. He was someone who said, hey, I know this part of the country. I know their difficulties, and Trump is kind of conning them into thinking he can do more than he actually will be able to. That rhetoric has not only subsided, JD Vance has become one of the most articulate and forceful exponents now of the Trump approach to not only rhetoric but policy. Talk to me about that evolution. What does it say, not only about JD Vance, but the modern Republican Party under President Trump?
Well, look, as you'll recall, during the 2020 presidential primaries, Kamala Harris said a lot of things about Joe Biden, including basically calling him a racist. So, look, things get said during the course of campaigns.
But JD wasn't a politician back then.
Things get said.
He was like an observer, speaking on behalf of his people.
During the course of the campaign, things get said about candidates all the time. I think at the end of the day, Donald Trump's record during his tenure in terms of job creation, in terms of economic growth prior to COVID causing that shutdown here in America, his foreign policy, his policy in terms of securing the border. Those are the issues that matter to the American people. Frankly, I don't think most people are going to care what someone said 8 years ago. I think they're going to care about what the policies are that are going to impact their life in this election. And I think when, at the end of the day, when this election is decided, it's going to be decided by the American people based on what they saw during Donald Trump's 4 years versus what they've seen during Joe Biden's 4 years. That's going to be the determinative factor.
From your vantage point, Congressman Lawler, what effect have the events of the last 36 to 48 hours had on this convention and the future of this campaign?
Look, but for the grace of God, we'd be having a very different discussion right now.
A very different convention. A very different
millimeters difference. And so, you know, obviously everyone is grateful that President Trump survived that assassination attempt. This is a time for moral clarity in our country, for Americans, regardless of your political party or view, to come together around a simple premise. Elections should be decided by votes at a ballot box, not by violence at a rally. And whatever our political differences are, and there's many in this country, and whatever our differences are in policy, we can have that robust debate and still respect each other as Americans. The rhetoric needs to stop. Donald Trump is not going to destroy our democracy if he's the next president of the United States. He's not a fascist. Yes, we have deep differences of opinion. And by the way, even within the Republican Party, we have differences of opinion at times. You fight those out through ideas. You don't fight them out through violence. And to me, I think what you're going to see this week is a unified Republican Party because America deserves leadership. They deserve unity focused on the issues that matter to the American people. Whether you're talking about the economy, whether you're talking about the border, whether you're talking about foreign policy, we have a lot of challenges right now, and we have to focus on solutions, not division, not overheated rhetoric that seeks to demonize one candidate or one party. All of us have a responsibility.
I'm sure you would agree with me, Congressman Lawler, that election results should not be contested with violence on the steps of the United States Capitol or inside the Capitol or at the doors of the House or Senate either.
No, listen, I was the first member of the New York State Assembly to put out a statement condemning what happened on January 6th. I have been very clear, whether it was January 6th, whether it was those who took control of a federal courthouse in Portland, whether it was those who burned a police station in Minneapolis. Violence of any kind, political violence of any kind, should be universally condemned and rejected. We should always debate our issues through public discourse and debate and discussion and through legislation. That's what we have the ability to do. Our vote is the way to exercise our political differences,
and the way to
not
confer
violence.
and the way to confer authority.
Absolutely.
In a peaceful democratic process.
Absolutely.
Congressman Mike Lawler, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for
Appreciate
your time.
it.
We'll have continuing coverage from right here in the Fiserv Forum, site of the Republican National Convention. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing or bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
And we're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. We're following the Republican National Convention, which is underway in Milwaukee. That is where we find our Caitlin Huey-Burns. Hello, Caitlin.
Hey, John. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. So let me ask you about the first piece of news, which is JD Vance picked as the vice president on the Trump ticket. You were out and about running around the country all over during the primaries. What do you hear about the JD Vance pick, and how do you sort it inside the modern Republican Party?
Yeah, I was actually told by a source familiar that the JD Vance pick, he was alerted by the former president that he would be the pick just 20 minutes before Trump announced it on Truth Social. That kind of shows you what the atmospherics were like leading up to this announcement. It was very tight-lipped within the campaign, and we know from our reporting that the former president was still deciding kind of at the last minute. But I've been talking to a lot of people who were close to JD Vance and who knew him in Ohio, and there are a couple of things that kind of stick out to me about what he could kind of bring to the ticket. A lot of people have maybe thought of him as kind of a very similar to Donald Trump, and that's true. However, you know, I'm thinking about when the Biden campaign said last week that their path to victory most likely runs through the Midwest. They said their clearest path to victory runs through the Midwest. And JD Vance could certainly help in that way. But he also kind of has that Ivy League pedigree as well that has allowed him to tap into those big money, deep-pocketed Republicans. He was instrumental in hosting fundraisers for Donald Trump, more so than the other candidates, connecting Donald Trump to Silicon Valley and working that kind of crowd to get into Donald Trump's corner. So he can kind of toe this line in the Midwest, but potentially also reach voters in the suburbs with that kind of resume, and especially with his wife and family. He has 3 young children, kind of providing that contrast to the top of that ticket on the Republican side, but also to their opponents as well.
And do you, you know, the traditional job of the vice president is to be the, or in the old days anyway, was to be the attack dog, famously achieved by Bob Dole when he was vice president. But things are different now, and particularly with respect to the most recent events on Saturday. JD Vance was one of the first to come out with an intemperate response, blaming essentially the Biden administration for the shooting, when the President Biden has never said anything nearly as close to as rough about Donald Trump as JD Vance has said. How much of an issue do you think that is for them? And can you really talk about the level of rhetoric when the person you've just put on the ticket called Donald Trump America's Hitler?
Absolutely. I mean, JD Vance is on the record with very, very critical things to have said about the former president. But I also know from covering Trump that he kind of likes when people come back into the fold, kind of convert to the cause. And that could be a selling point for JD Vance. And you mentioned the attack dog. I think the campaign is thinking about it this way. They have put a premium on the ability to debate, to be able to go on television and defend Donald Trump and also make the case on policy. And JD Vance is often pointed to by Trump supporters as someone who does just that, does a variety of different media, not necessarily just Fox News. He has been on Face the Nation as well as other networks. And Trump supporters have been kind of impressed by JD Vance's ability to go on television and make a strong case for Donald Trump, not only in terms of kind of the overarching themes of the campaign, but also specifically on policy. But as you mentioned, all of that will be heavily scrutinized, and we're already seeing the Biden campaign going through all that, and particularly pointing to JD Vance's comments that he has said about Trump. But, you know, I also covered that Senate race that he ran in. A lot of that was aired during that Senate race. That's not anything new to the Trump campaign. JD Vance also was among the first senators to endorse Donald Trump back in 2023. And that kind of thing, you know, carries a lot of currency with this campaign.
Caitlin Huey-Burns from Milwaukee, thank you so much. In the announcement of his vice president, former President Trump says JD Vance will be focused on reaching out to American workers and farmers in battleground states. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now. So, Anthony, what do we we're in high speculation here, but what does the past in terms of polling questions tell us about JD Vance?
Well, we try to stay on top of these things with the help of our great political team, right? So we knew that JD Vance was in the conversation, so we asked about him coming into the convention, right? We asked about a number of people, Marco Rubio, Doug Burgum, of course, who didn't make it. So here's JD Vance, and what you see is that for the folks who knew him, and that wasn't everybody among Republicans, but by 4 to 1, they said that they would be enthusiastic, they'd be satisfied. But this other point, by the way, I should say, this not sure, this is going to change real fast, right? We know that. But the other part of this, John, is when you break that down within Republicans by those who identify as MAGA, you get an even higher number who, in advance, said that they would be enthusiastic or satisfied with JD Vance. So they probably heard some of the rhetoric that you described. They probably heard that sort of vocal backing of the president, which MAGA, of course, would tell us that they really like. And I think one quick other point, this to me says a little bit about the sort of theory of the case of this election, which is turn out your base, make sure that everybody is happy and showing up because there's less persuadable voters out there, John.
And also, you know, given the relationship, and you can disagree based on the numbers with me on this, but based on the relationship that Donald Trump has with his base, if he picks him, the person he picks is going to be okay with his base.
Oh, well, that's also very, very plausible. Yes. So.
Where's the race stand? Where did this race stand before this most extraordinary event on Saturday? Just to kind of reset us on where things are. And this is, where's the race stand? And these numbers, everything's moving so fast. When were you in the field with this survey relative to all the various things that have happened in the last 3 weeks?
We finished this up. This is Saturday morning. This is before the tragic events.
Okay.
But this is where the race stood going right into that. We posted this on Sunday morning for the record. This is where we had it. Trump up 2 across the battlegrounds. But the really important thing is that we got estimates for all the battleground states. And there is this rather uniform shift toward Donald Trump from 2020. So he's got this narrow edge in all of them. Now, most times you hear me say a 2-point edge, that's not much. It still isn't much. But it's the consistency of it, John. In state after state, Donald Trump has this edge. And so what you see in that very uniform shift going on across the battleground states is, number one, there aren't necessarily state-specific effects going on here, and it's a very nationalized election, at least at this point. But the other part of that is that this then opens up more paths for Donald Trump through the Electoral College, and I think that overall reads as edge Trump.
Yeah, that's very interesting to see that Georgia and Nevada is essentially the same as those Midwestern states, because we had thought Trump was doing better in those, Biden doing better in the Midwest, but you're showing Trump's ahead basically in all those states. He's got options. Biden, well, we'll see. Yeah. I don't want to go on forever. Anthony Salvanto, thank you so much.
Sure.
It's official. Former President Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, and we now know who will round out the ticket. We're live in Milwaukee on night 1 of the Republican convention.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our continuing coverage from the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For those of you who've been with us all afternoon, you'll note I'm right back where I started from. We had some technical glitches. I had to move to another part of the convention arena here at Fiserv Forum. Then now I'm back here in the intervening moments. The first session of the Republican National Convention on its very first day is in recess. That's why you don't see very many delegates behind me on the floor. I can tell you, by absolute fact, that many of those delegates are in the concourse just above me. Very crowded, very slow to get back down here to our original camera position, but I'm here, it's all well, all is good. We are getting ready for phase 2 of day 1 of the Republican National Convention. I want to bring in Shelby Talcott and Isaac Arnsdorf. Shelby Talcott is a writer with Semaphore, Isaac Arnsdorf with the Washington Post. Isaac, you were in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday. I've got some very loud noise in my ears. Control room, if you can help me with that, please, so I can hear Isaac. That would be great. Isaac, I hope you can hear me. I'm having a...
Yes, loud and clear.
Tell me about your observations on Saturday, please.
Well, it was what stood out about that rally until about 6 o'clock when Trump took the stage was how large it was. You know, he always brags about crowd sizes, but that was a really, really big rally. Actually, a sea of red hats as far as you could see. And the other thing was the heat. It was clear sky. It was 90 degrees. A lot of people very impatiently waiting and struggling with some dehydration and some heat exhaustion. So Trump was about an hour late, and so a lot of excitement by the time he finally got there.
Isaac, thank you very much. Shelby, I want to bring you in. Your sense of the first day we've seen play out so far here at the convention.
Well, it's certainly been newsworthy in more ways than one, with the documents case being dismissed earlier this morning, of course, and that was almost immediately followed by news that Donald Trump would be announcing his vice presidential pick today. So it is no short of breaking news for us to talk about. With the JD Vance news, a lot of folks out here on the ground are really happy. He's seen as sort of a MAGA whisperer, even though he used to be very critical of Donald Trump. And somebody else who's really happy about today's news with the vice presidential pick, interestingly enough, is Project 2025. I got a text shortly after the news saying we're so back from somebody who works for them. So he's seen as a key ally, which is notable, of course, because there's been so much tension for the past few months between Donald Trump and his campaign and the project.
Shelby, I'm really glad you brought that up. That's a fresh and new insight. remind our audience what Project 2025 is and why the JD Vance pick as running mate for former President Trump, to their way of thinking, revives or gets them back in the game?
Project 2025 is this major organization that is working to help the next Republican administration, which is of course assumed to be Donald Trump, should he win. They are developing not only policy proposals for the next administration, very conservative policy proposals, but also a LinkedIn of conservatives of sorts. So a group of people who Donald Trump can look through a list and say, you can be hired, you've been vetted for an upcoming administration. And there was a lot of controversy around this project. Donald Trump disavowed them just a few weeks ago, but JD Vance notably is a big ally to the Heritage Foundation, which heads up this organization. He actually wrote the foreword for Kevin Roberts' book. Kevin Roberts is the president of Heritage Foundation, so they're seeing that as a real win internally.
We should note a quote from Kevin Roberts on a podcast got a lot of play last week, saying we are preparing for a second American Revolution that will be bloodless if the left allows for it.
Yes, absolutely. And that was one of the things that I'm told Donald Trump's campaign was trying to push back on, because right now Donald Trump is trying to get those moderate independent voters. And so they viewed some of that rhetoric coming from Project 2025 and some of the policy proposals as almost too conservative for the point in the race
and
at
too
which
combative.
they're out. Exactly.
Isaac, if you're still with us, and I really appreciate you hanging with us. There's obviously some noise around you that is somewhat distracting to me. That's my fault, not yours. Isaac, your impressions of this first day and what are the biggest takeaways for you?
Well, it's impressive that the campaign was able to keep Vance a secret right until the very end, despite him being really the front runner for a while, from what we understand. And withstanding a lot of lobbying from donors and some advisors who were hesitating about him, his biggest proponent was the former president's son, Donald Trump Jr. And this is a choice that really, it doesn't complement Trump on the ticket the way that his previous running mate, Mike Pence, did. This is really a choice that reinforces what Trump is running on and makes a generational gap or makes a generational bridge to a future for MAGA.
And Isaac, on that point very quickly, with Mike Pence, it was a bid to reassure evangelical Republicans and Christians about Trump's orientation issues they care about. Former President Trump clearly no longer feels he has to prove himself to them and has a little bit more wider range of options, and that made it all the more easy for him directionally to go with JD Vance, correct?
Yes, and this is a play for Pennsylvania in a lot of ways, which both campaigns think will be the decisive state, and it's next door to Vance's home state, and a profile of voter that Trump is betting he can help win over.
Isaac Arnsdorf, Shelby Talcott with me here on the convention area. Thank you so very much. We're going to take a quick break. But before we do that, he's one of Donald Trump's fiercest critics in the Republican Party. Coming up next, former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan joins us remotely, not from here, on America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't
miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was gonna be born, he was only gonna live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are back with live coverage from the Republican National Convention right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I want to go down to the convention floor, a little less populated than it was an hour ago because we are in recess between phase 1 and phase 2 of the first day of the convention. But we find our Ed O'Keefe down there at the convention floor. Ed, great to see you.
Good to see you, Major. A little less crowded, which means there's a little more spectrum, and hopefully the connections will hold for this. I want to show you one thing that has happened here in the last little bit. You know Donald Trump, and you know he's big on signage and look. Some of the delegates have already taken to making an update to the sign. Undoubtedly, we'll see some new ones in the coming days, but there is the initial reaction from delegates from the Cornhusker State, Nebraska, reacting to that decision a little while ago. We're getting ready for what we're told is, in essence, an evening focused on the economy. They're going to have several different people speaking tonight about real-world cost concerns as issues about the economy and inflation continue to top the minds of many voters across the country. And you're going to hear from a handful of people, regular everyday Americans, some of them former Democratic voters now voting for former President Trump, who want to share their stories and concerns that the Biden administration has mishandled the economy. An interesting way to start, understandable, given that it remains one of the current president's biggest vulnerabilities. And we're also going to get a better sense of the ongoing reaction to the assassination attempt on Saturday. You and I, Major, have talked about this in other settings already here on CBS News, about this strengthened resolve of delegates and party leaders to make sure that the deal is done and the election is won in November. The belief, at least in the early days, is that this could give them a real big boost, given the symbolism, given the way Trump reacted himself, and given the fact that it's likely to compel many voters, if out of sympathy or merely just being impressed by how he responded and thankful that he survived, swing in the direction of Republicans. You were talking to Anthony Salvanto, we were hearing from him earlier about how even before the shooting, things were favoring or to the advantage of Trump. We'd be really curious to see what this week does to either sustain that and expand it or potentially keep things where they are.
Ed O'Keefe, to your great relief and to my great relief, all the comms seamless in that communication from the convention floor. We thank you very much. I want to bring in former Maryland Republican governor, two-term governor, and currently the Republican nominee for the United States Senate, Larry Hogan. Governor, it's great to see you. You're in our Washington, D.C. bureau. My first question is, why aren't you here in Milwaukee?
Well, there aren't a whole lot of undecided Maryland voters out there in Milwaukee, and that's what we're really focused on, is trying to win votes here in Maryland.
And to that effect, Governor Hogan, helpful or not helpful to have former President Trump's endorsement?
Well, it wasn't that helpful for me. President Trump lost Maryland by 33 points, so I ran 46 points ahead of him. It was not something we asked for. But that's really not impact. I'm out there talking to Maryland voters. It doesn't have much impact at all.
How about this weekend? The events of this weekend, you have for weeks throughout your candidacy been talking about the necessity in this country to bring the partisan temperatures down. I imagine you feel that even more profoundly as a result of the events this weekend.
Well, Major, this is something that I've actually been talking about for many, many years. And, I've been talking about it everywhere I could to anyone who would listen. The events that just took place with the attempted assassination of the former president kind of brings to a head all of that concern about the kind of angry, toxic politics, the divisive rhetoric, and about how important it is to lower the temperature. And I'm glad to hear that now both President Biden in his Oval Office address, and I understand President Trump is going to change his remarks to try to talk about some of these concerns that I've been espousing for a long time. I actually literally have been focused on this as my primary passion for several years now.
Governor Hogan, as a Republican seeking a Senate seat in the state of Maryland, how do you react to the inclusion of Ohio Republican Senator JD Vance on President Trump's ticket? He is regarded as someone who not only speaks the MAGA language, but does so with an aggression that former President Trump likes. Are you comfortable with that pick?
Well, I don't know JD Vance. We've never met. I think the two of us have pretty different views of the world. I certainly thank him for his military service. And look, I think we were just talking about the need for people to do away with the divisive rhetoric and to lower the temperature. I think that goes for President Biden, President Trump, and certainly JD Vance. I think we got to, instead of just mentioning one time, we're going to start lowering the temperature, and we're going to talk about trying to use less angry and less divisive rhetoric. I think that's what we've got to see continuing throughout the rest of this campaign.
Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, current Republican candidate for the United States Senate. We thank you very much for your time, sir. That does it for me now. I'll be back at 7 p.m. Eastern. CBS News 24/7 will, of course, bring you coverage of the Republican National Convention all night long. The Daily Report with John Dickerson starts right now.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this.
What is at stake here? What is the answer then?
Do you know why? You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened? Why?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News original.